Welcome to the Vision Driven Marriage Podcast. If you're struggling in your marriage, or maybe you're wondering if it's even salvageable, before you give up or before you let things get too hard, let us come alongside you and help you solidify your marriage. We offer biblical encouragement and insight to help you strengthen your marriage.
Welcome, my friends, to this episode of the Vision Driven Marriage Podcast, where we encourage and equip you for lifelong love. Today, we're honored to introduce to you Randy Pryor, a pillar of strength and the author of the SOS Reconnection Method. Randy's unwavering dedication to helping separated husbands find their way back to love and connection is both inspiring and invaluable. Our conversation today promises to uplift and empower those who may be facing similar challenges. So grab a cup of coffee or your favorite beverage and settle in, and prepare to be moved by Randy's wisdom and encouragement to never give up on love.
Welcome to the Vision Driven Marriage Podcast. We're Doug and Leslie Davis, and today we're joined by Randy Pryor.
And Randy helps husbands whose wives have said, "I'm done."
Randy, welcome. We're glad you're with us today.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to hear about what that message really looks like. I know you've written a book, but the concept of husbands who are finding themselves in a position where they're either separated or they might soon be, and being completely caught off guard by it, is not a new phenomenon. It's been going on for a long time. So let us know a little bit about the insight that you have in this situation.
Sure, absolutely. I was married for about 14 years and had it all, wife and kids and multiple businesses and all the stuff that, the world will say that we're a success, right?
Right.
And I used to be for about 40-year career now. I was a comedy juggler and magician on cruise ships and all over the world and traveled everywhere. And we had a great time doing that. And that was a lot of fun. But when my wife and I decided to have kids, we got off the ships and came home, right? So we're on land. And that kind of pushed me into overdrive. So I became a workaholic. Didn't realize it, right? I just wanted to provide for the kids. In fact, that's what the world teaches us. If you want to be a good husband, you need to become a good provider. And that's what we learn. But unfortunately, most of us, that's all we learn. So I did that, and I dove into work and I did everything and I provided for the family. And after 14 years, my wife came to me and said, "Hey, listen, I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce." And it threw me for a loop. I mean, it was the most painful thing ever. So I went to my church and they had a support group for separated guys. And I dove in and I learned all kinds of things that I should have been doing all along that I just didn't know about. Right. And that's where it started. Matter of fact, 6 months later, they asked me to become a leader, and that was 14 and a half years ago, and I'm still there. So it's again, the phrase is, I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was that bad.
Right. I can't tell you how many times that I've heard exactly that phrase. I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was this bad. And
Right.
so many times guys are caught off guard because, as you said, we have this innate desire to provide, and the world is telling us that the way that you do that the right way is to provide financially, and so we throw ourselves into work, and it can often work out very badly. And so, what would you tell a guy who has just recently been caught off guard by the concept of, my wife wants to separate?
Yeah, that's it's really hard. It's really, really painful because it's so out of the blue. It seems like out of left field for us, right? So when they have an argument, that's one thing. When there's a separation, when they kick us out or they leave or something, and it's an actual separation, the time for talking about it is past. That's gone. It's no longer on the boards, right? She's saying, I'm out. In fact, she's saying two things. She's saying, I can't stand the way it is, and I can't imagine that it will ever change permanently, right? Those are two major things. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't change or get better. It just means that right now she can't imagine it. And that's based on her personal experience with her husband.
That may be after years of feeling alone and isolated in the relationship. And then on top of that, when there's no acknowledgement or validation of those feelings, then that does become her experience.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. And unfortunately, guys think that if they put a Band-Aid on it, they buy her flowers, they tell them they're sorry, they do all the stuff, right? And it backfires because it just shows that he doesn't get it. He's not understanding this, right? So this is kind of harsh, but here's the reality. Her biggest fear is that he does change and they get back together, and it's wonderful for a while. And then it slides right back to the way it used to be. That's her biggest fear. So, if you're watching this right now, and if you're separated, I've got some news for you, and it's not pretty, but here it is. Here's the truth. Okay. Your wife is not coming back to you. And I know that's harsh, but your wife is not coming back to you. She may go forward with you, but she's not going backwards into the old, dead, broken, irreparable marriage.
Right.
And that's, again, based on her experience. Why would she come back to what she already knows is broken?
But
so all you got to do is change it.
But I love that message, though, because there's still hope in that, right, she might not be coming back to that broken relationship, but that doesn't mean that it can't be changed, and she still might move forward,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a hope-filled message.
Right. Right. Oh, absolutely. Miracles happen all the time, but we know communication often is one of the things that breaks down pretty early, when you struggle to be able to even recognize the problem the same way as your spouse does. But I look at how the very things that cause us to come together in the first place can end up contributing to the struggles that you've just described. Because even though it's not true in 100% of men, most of us are wired to fix problems, and we need to acknowledge that and talk about that.
Right.
And I know that there was an episode probably 6 months ago where I was sharing that one of the struggles that I had early on in our marriage was Leslie had a terrible day and she needed to cry. And while she was telling me about her terrible day, I was formulating all the solutions to fix the problem that caused her terrible day. And it was not at all what she needed, but I'm just being blunt. I had no idea what she needed. I was blessed enough where she told me early on, that's not what I need you to do. I don't need you to fix this.
Just need you to listen.
And that was a great thing. But then I look at how so many women have this same kind of innate wiring, but theirs is for security, whether they provide it for themselves. And a lot of women do provide that for themselves, or if it's provided through their relationship. And so the combination of us going out trying to fix everything, but then not really understanding what causes the security. I've seen so many times where that's a struggle, and so many times where I had a near collision in my own relationship because I didn't understand the struggle. So what would you tell somebody who's at that place where they know how they're made, but they don't know what they need to be able to move forward? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Well, obviously, as a quick review, because we all know this, but I'll say it out loud. Men and women are made differently.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Thank you,
We're
God.
we're just different, right?
There's a lot of benefits in that.
Right. Well, of course. Right. He doesn't make any mistakes, but he made men for and again, generally speaking, men got the logic and the need to fix things. That's like in our DNA, right? Okay. That's why it works for us everywhere else. Like in your job, okay, you do your job, you get paid. Pretty simple, right? If you don't do your job, you don't get paid. Okay, that's pretty black and white for us. And that's how we kind of relate. Women, on the other hand, as you know, emotions, nurturing, intuition, really great stuff, but that's not how we're built. So we try to communicate from our understanding and not from theirs. Okay, so it's simply two different perspectives. I'll give you a quick little illustration, one of my favorite. Husband and wife go outside, and the wife says, "What a beautiful green sky." And the husband says, "It is a beautiful sky, but it's blue." And she says, No, the sky we're under right now." He says, "Yeah, it's blue. Hang on a second. Bob, Bill, come here. What color is the sky?" And they say, "It's blue. Why?" And they look over where the wife used to be, and there's a big puff of smoke because she's gone. She doesn't want to be told that she's wrong. And the answer is not blue or green. The answer is Isn't that amazing? You see green and I see blue.
Right.
It's just two different perspectives, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't, being a
It's
man and having the logic, kind of stuff in me, I had to get over the idea that it had to be right or wrong,
right.
Yes.
It's not a
right?
right or wrong thing.
It's not, and it's hard for us to relate to that.
Right.
It's kind of like when, oh boy, if a guy is at a table and there's a big puzzle with all the pieces, right? And it's all made, it's all done except for two pieces of the puzzle, and they're in my hands. I've got the two pieces. I'm not allowed to put the pieces in there. No, it's not. You have to consider that the puzzle is finished like it is, and these two pieces, no, they're just extra. Oh, it drives guys crazy.
Right.
It would, yeah, it would drive. It'd drive
Drive
anybody
them nuts.
crazy. It'd probably drive a lot of females crazy too.
Sure.
I think a lot of the times what I see too, going on, the dynamic going on between a husband and a wife is, it's not about right and wrong, but it's, you have to be like me.
Oh, and
And we're not like each other,
Sure.
but I want you to be more like me. I want
Sure.
you to be more emotional. I want you to be more connective. I want you to be,
Right.
all the things. And likewise, women being more logical. Well, we're not logical. I mean, we're logical. Yes. Like we're
Right.
logical,
Right.
but
Right.
our initial reaction may be emotional before it's logical.
right. And we think we
Mhm.
think we want our spouse to be more like us. The reality is we
We
don't.
don't.
What drew us together in the first place was that we're so much better
Right.
together.
Mhm.
Right.
But those very things that we love about one another can frustrate us to no end. And so,
Mhm.
one of the things that's beautiful about that, though, is we get to the same place, but we do it very differently. Very differently. Men
Yes, sir.
tend, again, to say, show me the problem, I'll fix it now. We're
Right.
often, I know that Leslie in particular, she sees things I don't see. She understands the way somebody's feeling when all I want to do is help them. And she understands the way that it will impact them in the long run, where I don't see any of that. Again, I'm just, let's
Right.
solve the problem. And
Right.
that by itself is a good thing. Problem is if we don't communicate that
Mhm.
difference well, we are
Right.
really going to struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I agree with I think it was Stephen Covey who said, people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply.
Uh-huh.
And I was guilty as any other guy out there. I don't know why, but I thought it was a good thing that while she's describing the issue, I'm already coming up with the answer. I'm already coming up with a fix.
Guilty.
And it was stupid.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. That's what works everywhere else, right? So, I'm a big fan of the idea that any two people can solve or at least manage anything, any issue or problem, as long as they're on the same page.
Mhm.
But right now, if you're going through separation, not only are you not on the same page, you're not
Mhm.
even in the same book.
Yeah.
And if divorce is on the table, you're not even in the same library.
Right.
So we got to get you guys back on the same page. And that has nothing to do with convincing her, talking her into something. Those days are gone.
What
Right?
are the first steps for that? What would you tell someone who you're coaching through?
Yeah, that's a great question. Believe it or not, if your goal is to, let's say, get back together with your wife, the best way to do that is to let go of the idea that you can fix this. Right? After doing this for 14 years, I can tell you, if you really want to fix this, you got to stop trying to fix this. That's all about manipulation, right? It's about changing her mind.
Right.
The real way here's the first step. Okay. First step is you want to change your goal. Instead of your goal being, how do I get her to, how do I change her mind?
Right.
Okay, all she's God's daughter, so God's got her.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta give her up to God and say, okay, I want to change my goal to becoming the best version of myself that I can be. Okay. And that's the first step. It's also the hardest because guys aren't built that way. I want to fix it. I want to say the right words and give me the magic phrase. And then we're back to square one and we're good again. And that's not it. And unfortunately, I mean, it's a great goal to have. God wants us to be together, right? He invented marriage and he hates divorce, right? We understand this.
Mhm.
But the best way to get to that point is to stop trying to fix the situation. Instead of focusing on the issues, you want to focus on becoming the best version of yourself as quickly as possible. And that's how we help guys. That's the best way to reach that goal and the quickest way to do that.
How would you suggest that a guy who's working on becoming the best version of himself reconnect with his wife? I'm assuming this is something that you outline in your book, which is called the SOS Reconnection Method. So I'm assuming that there's a method, right, to reconnection.
Yeah, SOS is very simple. The first S is stop pushing her away. O is open communication. The last S is surround yourself with some godly men who've already gone through it before. It can help you get through it, right? Support and accountability.
Good.
So that's what that's about. And it's there is a way through this, but that's the only way that I've ever seen. It's not about all these techniques and tricks and no contact. And that's all manipulation.
Right.
That's not what that's not what this is gonna, that's not what works.
And I
What
love your
works is
book.
saying, okay.
It's less than, it costs less than a cup of coffee. It's widely available. And I just think that it will be a great help to a lot of people. And so I'm just going to plug the website. It's randypryor.com, right? The book's available on there and it's $4.99. You're like less than a cup of coffee, you know?
Yeah.
Now, I know that some of our listeners, though, as they're listening to this, they want to check this out. And some of the guys are struggling because they heard you just now, and what you said was great. It's not about this step-by-step process. It's more than that. The problem is a lot of our listeners right now are saying, the guys who are starting to struggle a little bit in their relationship, they're saying, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Because that's where they're stuck, because that's the way we so often operate. So if somebody's saying, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, how would you respond to them?
Okay, great question. The first thing you want to realize is that the goal is not to get her to change her mind or to get her back, right? Your wife has to be able to imagine that life with you could be better than it ever was. That's not because of a conversation. That's not because of a promise or good intentions. That's experience, right? That's the experience that got her to say, I'm out. So it's only going to be experience that's going to make her want to change her mind. And that's between her and God. So there are some things you can do. One of the things that I highly recommend is something that I started 14 years ago. It's called reconnecting. And it's reconnecting with texts, but it's not about texting as we know it. Texting, as we all know, can be very dangerous, right? There's no inflection. There's no body language. Somebody types the word no, and you don't know if they're mad or what's going on. But we can use texting as a delivery system. If you have the ability to text your wife and she has not told you, don't call me, don't text me, leave me alone. Okay, if there's a little bit of wiggle room, then you can open up some conversation using reconnecting. I'll give you a quick example. What I ask my guys to do is create a top 10 list. Okay, first thing you want to do is start with, what is she like? What is she into that you have nothing to do with? It doesn't matter what it is, business, needlepoint, it doesn't matter, right? Let's say that she's into gardening. The first part of the top 10 list would be to make it very specific and very personal to her. So if it's gardening, okay, what kind of gardening? Well, she really loves roses. Okay, great, roses. What kind of roses? Blue roses. Okay, she loves to garden blue roses, loves to grow blue rose. That's her thing. Okay, that's good. And you come up with 9 more things that she's into that you don't have anything to do with. Okay. So the first part is make it very specific, very personal to her, right? It's best if you have nothing to do with this. Okay, so that's the first part. Make it specific and personal. And then when you're going to send her a text, let's say, you want to make sure that there's no pressure involved, right? When you're sending her a text, it's not about trying to engage her. You're not trying to get her to like you again. That's not part of it right now, right? You just kind of want to let her know that you know her and you're thinking of her and that kind of stuff without any pressure whatsoever. And then the last part, I call them ground rules to reconnecting. The last part is about frequency. How often do you do these texts? Well, that's more art than science. It's more about when would it be welcome for her to receive one of these texts. Because if you did 3 in one day, that's a full court press. And she's going to think you're like trying way too hard, right? So once every other day, it depends. Let's say that she loves gardening roses. Okay, if you went to Google and you go to Google News, right? It's a separate little area. upper right-hand corner, you click on the little, whatever it is, you click Google News and you put in blue roses. Well, all these articles are going to come up and they're pretty fresh. They're pretty, pretty current.
Mhm.
And being a good husband, you go through them and you see, oh, this is one. She's really going to like this article, right? But your heart has to be pure. This is not about trying to change her mind or convince her of anything. It's not a technique or tactic. Right. Right. That's no good. And God knows our heart. So it has to be pure, right? So you say, okay, I think she'll like this one. And you grab the URL and you text it to her. But all you say is, check this out. That's it. It's one way. You don't expect a reply.
Mhm.
It's not about trying to get something from her. It's more of a gift. It's more of a little present, right? Now, this is a way that you can demonstrate that you're thinking of her, but without the pressure of, I'm thinking of you. You don't add the pressure of, I love you, I miss you, we should work on this together, blah, 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 blah. That's nothing but pressure.
Right.
Okay. But if you're creating a top 10 list, and by the way, most guys can do 3 off the top of their head, then they start to struggle and they think of 3 more, and there's 4 more to go. Oh my gosh, a lot of people can't even come up with that. Well, that's your first clue that you don't know your wife well enough.
Right.
Right.
So
you should
husbands,
know.
husbands, if you're listening to this and you're not separated, like if you can't do your top 10 list, you need to do your top 10 list right now, because it's like, that's a dangerous place to be, I think, not knowing your wife. And you know what? The reverse is true too.
Yes.
Like you can say that to the wives and say, wives, if you don't know what your husband's into, then something's missing in that connection. Like if I didn't know that you like to ride Harleys and watch the Cubs, right there's the top 2 on the list right there, Harleys and Cubs.
Yeah, and watching the Cubs on Harleys.
Yeah.
Now
take the bike to Chicago, right? Watch the Cubs.
But so for those of you who are listening to this episode, you know that this doesn't directly apply to you, but you're listening because you know that it's helpful and it's really good. This is your moment for the preemptive attack.
Yes.
Preemptively.
Right.
Preemptively do a top 10 list of your spouse's interests and make sure that you're doing those things ahead of time. You don't have to have a struggle to be able to see how you can do things better.
Right. Hobbies, interest, whatever they're passionate about. If someone were to talk to them about one of these things, they'd kind of light up. Okay, pay attention to that. If you're at Costco and she spends a lot of time in the coffee aisle, maybe coffee's important to her, right? There's all kinds of things out there. Now, what you can send is not just a link to an article. You can send a photo. One of my favorite things is if you go into your own phone and you go to your photos section, you go back as far as you can, and you find a picture of your kids when they were very small, but you're not in this photo because it's not about trying to manipulate. Right. You just know that she'd love this photo and the kids were very small or something. And you send her a photo and all you say is, look what I found. Again, you're not saying, hey, did you get my text? You're not putting any pressure on her. She got it. She got your text. Right? Now, if she replies back and gives you a thumbs up or a heart or weren't they amazing, whatever. Okay, that's kind of like a green light and this is a good thing to be doing. If she replies back and says, what'd you send this to me for? You have to be honest and transparent. And the answer is, because I thought you'd like it. That's the truth, right? Now, it has to be done with the right heart. Yes. In fact, here's my motto. Here's my motto for everything. Just do the next right thing for the right reasons with the right heart and leave the outcome to God.
Yeah.
Because if it's the next right thing, you never have to worry about the outcome. Will she like it? Will it change her mind? Will it help us get back together? That's all manipulation, right? God's got this. So don't worry about if it truly is the next right thing to do, and reaching out seems to be like the right thing to do, and being kind, right? And by the way, this little thing that I came to, this reconnecting, it works with everyone with a cell phone. Everyone. You can send one to your kids. You can send one to your friends, your neighbors, think about it. What if I sent one to you, Doug? What if out of the blue you get a text from me and it said, and it's just a link to an article about the Cubs and Harley. Right. It's Harley Day at Cubs, right?
It's Harley Day at Wrigley Field.
Right. And you go click, what is this? Because you know me. So you'd go, what is it? Okay. You click the link instantly. And there's this article about something that you are into. How does that make you feel?
And see, that's the part that I think so exciting. It's one of those, hey, they thought about me, and it gives you an
Bingo.
attitude of thankfulness.
Right.
Like
And
gratitude.
so
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
gratitude, the thankfulness that comes, I think, is one of those things you'd have to fight hard to press
Mhm.
down.
Yeah.
Because when somebody does
Yeah.
something that obviously is unique to you, it makes you
Mhm.
feel like you matter. And that's a good thing.
Right. Right. And you put some time in. It's not about the expense of buying her gifts. She's long past that, right? If there's a
Mhm.
separation, she doesn't want a gift. And it does feel like a manipulation when you buy her something.
Mhm.
One of my guys, before he joined the program,
Mhm.
said, yeah, well, she needed something. So she asked me to buy her a new iPhone. Oh, okay. So he did. And she went, yeah, thanks. Now leave me alone. Because that's not going to fix it. Buying her stuff isn't. But this kind of stuff is because it's personal, it's letting her know that you're paying attention and you're learning more, right? And to practice it, I would say do this every single day, just not to her. You do one to your friend, one to her the next day, one to each of your kids, because by the time they're 4, they have their own phone, right? Okay. That's actually how I came up with this 14 years ago, when my wife decided we were done, and the kids actually were on her side. They didn't want to be with me at all. Okay. And I was doing everything wrong. I was badgering my kids, basically, putting pressure on them. And they were young. They were like 11 and 9. You should spend 50% of the time with your father, and I love you. I miss you, and all this pressure. And they're thinking, what can we do about this?
Right.
So back in the day, I used to work at Disneyland. So I took the kids to Disneyland all the time. It was, daddy and kids day. And they loved Disneyland. So when this started to happen, and the whole thing fell apart and they were not on board with, dad at all, I went to Disneyland by myself. I went all the way to the end of the park, and there's a little area called Critter Country. And I turned around and I noticed that there was no sign anywhere that said Critter Country. So I just took a picture and I sent it to both of my kids. Within 5 minutes, I got a reply. And all I said, by the way, is I just sent a picture and I said, "Where am I?" That was it. That was the whole text. 5 minutes later, my oldest says, "You're in Critter Country. Come on, Dad, you can do better than that." And it was on. For the next 2 hours, I played a really great game with my kids who didn't want to talk to me at all. Right. And we reconnected because the clues just got harder and harder and harder. And, all the way down to a close up of the little decoration on a wall or something. And that's how it started. And it's so effective. We still do it to this day, 14 years
That's
later.
fun. Yeah.
It's pretty great. So that works.
Well, we know that there are a lot of things that will run through the minds of the guys as they're listening to this, realizing that, there's things that I can do better. How would you encourage somebody who's wanting to get started reconnecting, but they're not really sure how to go about it?
Yeah, I would highly recommend opening your notebook and creating a top 10 list.
Okay.
Find out what your wife is really into, really passionate about, what her likes are. And again, it shouldn't have anything to do with you. For instance, one of my guys said, well, we love to go camping together. And I said, well, that's not great, because that'll make her think that you're trying to manipulate her
Right.
into thinking about something we did. Right.
Mhm.
And another one of my guys was actually surprised when his wife did not reply to his text. And I said, well, what did you send? So, well, I sent her a picture of the two of us on vacation in Australia a couple of years ago. I said, well, he thought that was a manipulation. You're trying to get her to think of something. Okay. All that has to go out the window. Your
Mhm.
heart has to be right. It has to be because it's the right thing to do. So don't try and get her to think of anything. Make a
I
top 10 list.
I like how the texting or what did you call it?
Yeah, it's
Reconnect.
hard to,
It is hard to
yes,
say.
it is. It is. It's really hard. Reconnecting.
Reconnecting
Yeah.
is subtly teaching the art of humility and
Hmm.
selflessness. Like there's
Right.
such a selflessness in order to send that type of text. There's this sense
Right.
of selflessness that has to be present. And
Right.
that's a hard skill to master. And those that master it will not likely get to the point of separation.
Right.
Right. It can
Right.
also be used as a
Preemptive.
a preemptive
Mhm.
behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I could encourage people along those same lines, create a poster as big as you can, a wall-size poster. And all it has to say is, if it's important to you, it's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it has two meanings. If it's important to my wife, it's important to me. And if it's important to God, it's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what do we do with that? Well, basically, what if you woke up every morning and you spent 5 whole minutes thinking, how can I make my wife's life a little better today?
Mhm.
5 minutes. Okay. Did she lose something? I could help her find it. Is she stressed out? Can I help her get de-stressed? Is there something that I can do instead of, I got to go to work, got to make money. If I make a lot of money, then my family knows that I love them. Right? 2 steps. We think that everything in our lives is a 2-step process. Something's broken, let's fix it. That's a 2-step process for guys. It's broken, let's fix it. That's what works everywhere else. Right? In your job, whatever. You show up for your job, you do your job, they pay you money. Okay, that's good. For women, it's a 3-step process. It's not about it's broken, let's fix it. In a woman's life, if it's broken, that's step 1. The middle section, step 2 for them, is reconnection.
Mm-hmm.
You have to reconnect first before you work on the issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where guys it doesn't make sense to them because we're 2-step.
Yeah, in that middle step, that's that connection point. That's where trust is built.
Right.
And if trust isn't built there, then you're not qualified to fix it, you know?
Right. There'll be no connection. It's kind of like God's sense of humor with sex. Guys feel that, okay, sex means that if we have sex, then we'll be connected and we'll feel really connected. That's great. But God also made women, and women know that, well, unless we're connected, there'll be no sex.
Right.
So it's reversed, right? And that's why we're on this planet right now, right? Before we go home, this is our dress rehearsal to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, we started earlier saying that we get to the same place, but we go about it a little differently. You just described it really well. And I know that our listeners will appreciate understanding that other step. Now, some of the guys probably are thinking, but I'm not sure I understand how to reconnect with the situation the way my wife does. I'm not sure that I will ever feel the same things my wife feels about it. But one of the things I was really encouraged by, and I want to thank you for sharing this, Randy, was it's not about trying to be like your spouse. It's about being humble enough to recognize what your spouse is dealing with. That's huge. Right. That's gigantic. And so the guys who are thinking, I'm not sure that I'll ever feel the same things my spouse is feeling, you don't have to. But you need to be able to acknowledge what she's feeling. You need to be able to humble yourself enough that it's not just jump into fix it mode. You need to acknowledge that middle step.
Right, absolutely. And the reality is we have one choice. We can either accept her for who she is and where she is right now in her life, or we can reject her. We cannot fix her.
Right.
And a lot of the guys, their first inclination when we're separated, oh my gosh, I'm in a lot of pain, I got to fix this. They try to fix the situation, the issues, or even her, right? And I have never heard a wife say, oh, honey, thank you for showing me the error of my ways.
No.
There's no wife ever.
No. The only thing we can fix as guys when we're dealing with relational issues is our own choices and behavior. That's the only thing we get the opportunity to fix.
I think how we say that is you're responsible for your own side of the street.
Cleaning up your own side of the street. If there's a mess, even though the mess is on both sides, you can only clean up your own side of the street.
Yeah.
Right. And if you cross the street, it'll go south.
Yeah.
If you cross the street to her side to try and help her, right? We'll put those in quotes, quote unquote, help her. Like, I don't know, leave the Bible open to and put a post-it note on a nice Bible verse that you think that she could read. Okay, don't
do that.
Don't.
Right.
Don't. Right. You read the Bible. Absolutely. Work on you.
Right.
But when you cross that street, well, I'm sure she'll like this. Yeah, no, don't. It's just manipulation.
Right.
Not that I've ever done that. I did everything. Here's the deal. I've made all the mistakes. So you guys don't have to. I've made every mistake in the book. And I know what that's like. And I've, dealt with about 1,400 guys now, about 100 guys a year. And I've seen all kinds of things. And we're in good company. We all make the same mistakes. And it's not even just in our little corner of the world. I've got clients in Australia and Japan, and because we're all raised the same way. You want to be a good husband, you become a good provider. We don't have to think like them. They don't have to think like us.
Right.
Mhm.
To accept one another,
Right.
to love one another because we're different.
Well, and I know that there's been so many times where I've been asked, how do you feel about that? And the honest truth is, I don't know, because it's not necessarily where I go. It's not
Right.
that I don't have feelings. Please don't misunderstand, as listeners, don't misunderstand. Of course you have feelings,
Right.
I thought
but
you said you
sometimes
had one
yes, I have
feeling.
one feeling, and occasionally it gets hurt.
Good.
But
Right.
but the fact that it may not be where you go to first doesn't negate the importance of it if it's where your wife does go first. And I think that's
Right.
really important. Now, the other thing that was so cool that you just shared, Randy, don't ever try to think that if I'm doing the right things, my spouse is required to respond rightly to me. Those kinds of expectations are unfair.
Right.
And that's not the way that God relates to us. God gives us grace. I'm so grateful that God doesn't love me just when I act accordingly. And I'm so grateful
Right.
that he's teaching me that I don't do the things that I do to earn his love. I was given his
Right.
love through Christ. He's wanting me to live in relationship, and it's not about because I did for you, you should do for me. And I think the same
Right.
thing's true in our marriage relationships, whether we're in the process of trying to rebuild something that's broken or maintain something that's good. It's not about, if I do the right things, you have to respond the way I want you to. That's an unhealthy
Mhm.
attitude that I think we really need to call out so that we can overcome it.
I'm having
Absolutely.
flashbacks of scenes from Fireproof in my brain right
Mhm.
now. He
Right.
takes the ball bat to the garbage can because she's not responding to him the way that he expects her to respond. And yeah, so I will put the link to that movie in the show notes too. And if you haven't watched it,
Absolutely.
watch it, because
Yeah,
that's a good movie.
it is a good movie. And the book that goes with that movie is called The Love Dare.
Yes.
And you just have to, at this particular point when you guys are separated, it's great to learn what The Love Dare teaches. It's actually one of my favorite movies and books,
Mhm.
but it's not about what she is receiving.
Yes.
It's about you becoming the kind of person who does these things,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Big distinction there. And what I would say in agreement with what you just said is we don't want to base our behavior on her behavior,
Right.
right? It's not about I'll be nice to her when she's nice to me.
No.
No, we are called to be the spiritual leaders of the household. That means we lead by example,
Mhm.
right? And just because nobody taught us how to do that doesn't negate that. We are still called to be the spiritual leader of the household, which means we do the next right thing. Why? Because it's the right thing to
The
do.
right thing to do. Right. We did a whole
That
podcast
is all.
episode on covenant relationships, and compared that to contractual relationships. And I know that's really what we're talking about here, at
Yeah.
least in this segment of the podcast, is that, living in a contractual relationship is I'm going to do XYZ if you do XYZ, or vice
Right.
versa. And that's not what God has
Right.
called us
No.
to. God has called us to live in a
No.
covenant relationship. That means I will do what is the right thing to do, regardless of what you do.
Right. Right. And that happens to be the single most attractive thing that you can do.
Yes.
When we're working on
Yes.
ourselves, right? Imagine this. What if your significant other was all about self-improvement, right? Going to their own small group and seeing how they can get closer to Christ. Okay, how attractive is that?
Mhm.
Okay, so honestly, that is the single most important thing that you can do is decide, I'm going to become the best version of me. I want to become God's man.
Mhm.
Okay. Because God's not going to tap her on the shoulder and get her attention and say, hey, look over at this guy. He's not going to do that until you're ready, until you're healthy. So
Right.
you get healthy. And I've seen it time after time after time. I've seen it from devastation. One of our guys was divorced before he even joined the program. He was divorced for 2 years and was completely blocked. Can't contact her at all.
Mhm.
And there was an occasion where it was a personal anniversary. So we crafted a nice note, sent it to her. She immediately unblocked him, and they started talking, and they started dating, and now they're back together.
Yeah.
Mm.
God can do anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can. Well, and if he can reconcile sinful people to himself, he can reconcile even the messiest of marriages. We just need to
Right.
trust him and do it his way. The struggle that we have is too often we want to do things our own way.
Right.
That just doesn't
Right.
work out very well.
Right. No, we want to help him.
Right, because
Yeah.
again, we're
Yeah.
going to fix it.
That's right. We're going to fix it. Right. It's like, no. It's instead of trying to think that you're going to fix it, how about we get out of his way?
Right.
Yeah.
How about we just do the next right thing? Just focus on becoming the best version who he wants us to be, and make that 100% focus.
Mhm.
0% on what she's doing, what she's thinking, what she's feeling, what other people are telling her. That's on her side of the street.
Yes, it
You
is.
let that go. You work on yourself. Watch what God can do with that.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's a good word. We want to encourage all of you. If any of this resonated with you, check out Randy's website, check out his book. Again, you can get it for less than a cup of coffee. It's going to benefit you. It's going to bless you. Randy, thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared today with our listeners.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're Doug and Leslie Davis. This is the Vision Driven Marriage, and we continue to pray that God will solidify your marriage.